Our chess journey is going really well. You've already learned about the pawns, the rooks, the bishops, and even the queen. But now things start to get a little bit more difficult. We've saved the toughest two pieces until last. But I think you're ready for the challenge now. Do you think so too? Of course you do. Let's take a look at the knight. We can see the knight standing very nicely at the square d4. But you should be getting used to these coordinates by now. And this is a very, very strange move. It does not move in a straight line, forwards, backwards, sideways, or even on the diagonals. It can't do any of those things. It moves in a very strange way. And if you look at this carefully, it can go 2 squares down and 1 square across. That's the shape of a capital L. If you look very carefully, long stick down, short stick across. This is a very strange move going around a corner. You can do the same in the other directions. Let's just take a look, see what that means. In this position, for example, the knight is still on d4, and we've marked all the places the knight can move to with black pawns. As we saw in the previous example, he can go 1, 2 down and 1 across. You can do the same in the other direction, 1, 2, 1 across. And the same in the other directions, 2 squares forwards, 1 across either side, or 2 squares across, and then either up or down from there. It's worth just spending a little bit of time just staring at that position to familiarize yourself with the strange way the knight moves and try and pick out those L-shaped patterns in your own minds. Spend a few seconds looking at that. 2 down, 1 across, 1 down, 2 across, and the same in the other directions. Some people remember that pattern really well. Other people remember the pattern on the other colour squares like this. This time the pawns are on the black squares, the knight is on the white square. And this gives a very good demonstration as to another strange thing about the knight's move. If the knight's on a white square now, it must travel to a black square next. If he's on a black square to start with, his moves take him onto white squares. So he's changing the colour of his squares every single time the knight moves. Unlike the bishop, of course, in the previous lesson, the bishop had to stay on the same colour all of the time. The knight can't do that. It has to change the colour every time it moves. The other strange thing about the knight, unlike the other pieces, if the knight's in the centre, as you saw in the previous positions, he can go to 8 different places. But the power of the knight reduces every single time he moves away from the centre. Here, for example, the knight is on the side of the board. Instead of going to 8 places, he can only go to 4 places. Try and follow the L shapes in your mind just by looking at that position. Let's take a look. 1 across, 2 down, and the same in the other directions. Half of the knight's moves now are off the board. The knight can't move over there. There's no board there at all. Its power has been reduced. A knight on the rim of the board is dim, to quote an old chess phrase. The knight on the rim is dim. And that's not even the worst case scenario for the knight. If the knight's in the corner, oh dear, he only has 2 different places to go to. To go from the power of having 8 places to go to be reduced to 2 in the corner is bad news for the knight. So we already know now that the knights are best placed in the centre of the board, where possible. There's yet another strange thing about the knight. Most chess pieces have to wait until there's a nice clear gap before they can move out. For example, the bishop in f1, in this little mini position, he's not allowed to move over here because he can't jump over this pawn. He has to wait until the pawn moves. Similar problem in this direction. He's blocked by his own pawns. This rook can't zoom down the board or across the board because things are blocking him also. The knight, however, doesn't have to wait around. The knight can still do his magnificent L-shaped move by jumping over pieces. He doesn't have to wait around for things to move. It's a knight who can jump over things. Very nice. It doesn't even matter if he's jumping over his own pieces or the pieces of the opponent. He can still do it. You jump over here, over the black pawn, and finally onto the black pawn on d6. Jumping over those two, and when it lands on there, the knight can actually capture the pawn on d6. He's jumped over a white pawn, he's jumped over a black pawn, and captured the second black pawn. A very, very interesting piece. Ooh, look at our board now. There's only one gap left. We're going to take a look at that piece in lesson number 6. But just look how many things you've done so far. We started with an empty board a few lessons ago. Now we have all of the pawns in the positions, and the rooks, the knights, the bishops, and the queen, just waiting for one piece now. The mini game with the knight starts like this. One knight against 3 black pawns. Exactly the same material as we had in the mini game for the bishop. The bish bash bosh, you may remember from the previous lesson. This game has a more predictable name. This game is called a nightmare. And the knight can win in 2 different ways, and they're exactly the same ways as we saw for the rook and the bishop. The knight can capture all of the black pawns, or if there was one pawn left, if the knight can block that pawn, then the knight will win. The pawns win by capturing the knight, or by getting one pawn safely to the end of the board. Out of all the mini-games we've looked at so far, this is definitely the hardest one. One bad move by the knight, and you're going to find it very, very difficult to stop the black pawns. In fact, if you were to move your knight to the side of the board, the knight will really struggle to make up this ground to get over to the other side of the board to stop these pawns charging down. So a better move with the knight would be to go to this side and not that side, like this. And then the knight's on his way to the center, where it might be able to stop these pawns. This is a very difficult game. If you can win with the knight in the nightmare game, you'll be doing very, very well. So why not give that a try against your friends or your family, and then we'll see you back for the next lesson to find all about the 6th and final piece of chess, and of course he will be the king. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you very soon.